Hey guys, it's Miss Roth here again, and we are going to review some of our final study guide problems that have to deal with linear relationships. If you want to turn to number 15, this is going to be the first problem we're going to work with. It shows us a graph that has to deal with rent based on the number of nights that guests rent a cabin. So we see this graph, and it shows the amount of money that a cabin costs to rent based on the number of nights that we get to rent it, and we need to find the rate of change shown in the graph. Now, when we talk about a rate of change, this is another way of saying slope. So our rate of change is going to be how the line is increasing on the graph. One way to find this, I just like to find 2 points that are very clear to me. So I see that 0, 10 is a point and 140 is a point. So I'm going to find my slope by doing 40 minus 10 on the top because that's my y, and then I have 1 minus 0 on the bottom because that is for my x. When I solve that, I'm going to get 30 over 1, or $30 per night. Pretty simple. All we're doing is just trying to find the rate of change. So every night it costs $30. So our answer for this is going to be A, $30 per night. Pretty straightforward. Just find those 2 points on the graph and make sure that you find the slope when it asks for rate of change. It basically means the same thing. Alright, so now that we have that, we could go ahead and move on to number 19. Now, number 19 is dealing with similar triangles. We know that they're similar because they're on the same line and most likely have the same slope. So, we want to try to figure that out. Let's try to figure out the slope of this line. What I like to do is figure out, okay, let's do the 2 endpoints of this triangle. Or we can do rise over run. So I see that it goes up 2 over 2. And then here, so our slope for A would basically be 1. Now for B, let's see if that has the same slope. It looks like we go over 5 and up 5. So that'd also be 1. So it looks as though they have the same slope. So we know it's going to be either A or B. Now for a triangle to be congruent, that would mean that the side lengths are the same. In A, our side lengths are 2 and 2. In B, our side lengths are 5 and 5. So those are not necessarily congruent. Instead of congruent, we can say that these are similar triangles because they have the same slope. However, they do not have the same lengths of sides, so they would be similar. So our correct answer for number 19 is going to be B. We want to make sure that we don't say they're congruent because they don't have the same side lengths, but they do have the same slope. So, as A would be probably our distractor, we want to make sure we get B as our right answer with the triangles being similar and we have the same slope. When you look at it, just make sure you know if they're similar and if they have the same slope or not. And that way we can move forward with problems like these that you'll see on the exam. Okay, let's go to number 29. So, number 29, we're going to deal with equations. Now, this is kind of jumping ahead for tomorrow's lesson that you'll have with Miss K. You're really going to be working with equations, but this is just kind of making sure we know how to read a graph and figuring out, okay, if I know the y-intercept and the way that it's going, I could probably make the best educated guess for this. So, remember that y-intercept is going to be right here. I see that when x is 0, y is at 40. So I know B in my equation is going to be a positive 40. And I could see that that means that this answer is either going to be A or D, because I know it has to be a positive 40 at the end. Now, I would have to figure out what my slope is. So, I'm going to find my 2 points. So I see we have 0, 40, and then I see we have 4 and 35. So, we're going to figure that out. We're going to have 40 minus 35 on our top, and then we're going to have 4 minus 0. And we're going to get 5/4. Now, if you notice the trend of this line is going down in a negative direction. So we know our slope has to be negative. Luckily for us, in this, it already shows us that the slope has to be negative, and we have 5/4 as our slope. So, A would be our correct answer because it has negative 5/4 x, which is our slope, and it has that positive 40 that we figured out from the y-intercept. So, A is going to be our correct answer for this one. It's very easy to go through this and not totally have to solve everything for it. If I know that I have that 40 as my y-intercept and it's positive, that's how I can knock out B and C because I know that's not going to be right. And another way to figure it out is if I know that the line is going down, so my slope has to be negative. So that's another reason why B and C wouldn't work, because the slope is positive in those situations. We want to make sure that if the line is going down, the negative or the positive sticks with the slope, which is attached to the x. So that's how we could kind of make an educated guess, but also solve for number 29, and we get the answer of A. Last one for today is going to be number 35. So 35, we just want to write an equation. It's kind of similar to the one that we just did. So the first thing I want you to notice is if the line is going up or down. It looks like it's going up, so this is a positive direction. We know that our slope is going to have to be positive. For us, all of our options are positive, so that's good to notice. Another thing to notice, do we have a y-intercept? Yes. We are starting when x is 0, y is at 10. So we know it's either going to be B, C, or D. It's not going to be A. We can cross that off. Okay. Now, let's see if we could try to figure out the slope. So, from here, we are going to figure out, I'll use a red color, the slope. Alright, so I have 0, 10. I always like to use that as one of my points. And I have, it looks like 2 and 20. So, I got my 20 minus 10 and my 2 minus 0. And right there, I'm going to get 10 over 2. And that means 10 divided by 2, I get a 5. I know it's going in a positive direction, so it's going to be a positive 5. And I know that my y-intercept is 10, so it's not going to be B because 0.5 is not my slope. It's not going to be 10, or it's not going to be C because 10 is not my slope. The answer for this is going to be D. I have 5 as my slope, and I have positive 10 as my y-intercept. So basically, we just want to make sure that we're plugging in for our slope, finding that slope, making sure we see, is there a y-intercept, or one other way to look at that is our starting point. I like to always say that's a starting point because that's where the line usually starts, is where it's at 0x and a different number y. In this equation, it was at a positive 10. So, that is all for linear relationships. Linear relationships kind of overlap with linear equations, and you'll have a little bit more practice with this tomorrow. But I want you guys to just make sure that you're understanding how to read the graph. See, is it going positive, negative? How can we interpret our equations and solve? So you'll get more practice with this tomorrow, but this is just kind of bridging that gap between what you learned yesterday and what you'll learn tomorrow. Use the cheat sheet when you're working through the quick check. Keep the cheat sheet, keep the study guide, and everything else, you can use it on your final and you guys will do fantastic. So thank you for tuning in today, and I will see you guys soon.